Back to open session. Item F, announcement of actions taken in closed session. There were no actions taken in closed session. Item G, discussion of items. Item G1, COVID-19 vaccine updates. Mr. Gonzalez?
All right, well, good evening, trustees. So in regards to vaccine updates, I don't know if you've been following up with the news. There's been a lot of changes lately. We did have a meeting with the Imperial County Health Department today, which they gave us an update on where they're at in regards to the COVID-19 vaccines. So in regards to phase one, there's 3 tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So actually today is the 27th actually is when they started the tier 3. Tier 3, those are the people that work in the pharmacies, people that work in the dentist's office, and after that we'll be moving to phase 1B. That phase has not yet started, and after that it'll be phase 1C. One of the interesting things that happened just recently, there was a lot of local control in regards to how the vaccines were being administered. The change has now been that the state is taking a lead when it comes to the actual to vaccines. So this is coming straight out of the state, simplifying the eligibility beginning mid-February. The state will implement a statewide standard under which healthcare workers, individuals 65 plus in education and childcare, emergency services, and food and agriculture workers will be eligible to start making appointments to receive the vaccine pending vaccine availability. These are the groups identified in phase 1B. So there's been an acceleration now, is the latest news from the state regarding the 1B group that includes some of the groups that I just shared with you. But as I mentioned, the state is going to now work more in unison with all the 58 counties, and that will allow the state to scale capacity to ensure that vaccine goes disproportionately to impacted communities. But again, there is no update regarding when exactly we will be receiving those vaccines. We talked to Janet Angulo from the health department, and that was her response, that they're still waiting themselves. They are receiving doses on a weekly basis. Those doses are actually going to be minimized at this point because the state now is going to be taking control of the actual way that they're going to be administering the vaccines. There's a vaccine hub that was put out. You might have read about it. San Diego counties, LA County. That is a pilot which is going to be activated statewide, and that is going to be used in order to have regular citizens be able to log in and find out when they're going to be able to take the vaccine. The other change also is that instead of groups, as they were targeting before, they're going to go into an age type of format. So depending on what age you are, then that's how they're going to be moving in regards to giving the vaccine. So this is just brand new information. As we get more information from the state, then we'll share it with the board and the updates that I send to you on a daily basis. Thank you.
Carlos, real quick, there's a question that was brought up to me actually and I have the same question, but it was brought up to me by some teachers. Some of us, because I'm included in that came from Mexico or from other countries and that had a TB shot done in another country, we've always going to test positive for TB. Because of that, every 5 years we have to get a scan and do those things. Has anybody mentioned that this COVID vaccine might become a mandatory vaccine for educators? Have you heard anything about that?
No, not at this point. It's all been voluntary, just like it has been voluntary for the first responders, voluntary for hospital staff. At this point, it has not been made mandatory. In fact, we do get updates from the county health department, and there have been hospital staff, some first responders, EMTs, for example, that have chosen not to take the vaccine for whatever reason, right? I think the majority have, But those that don't, then those vaccines are just rolled over to the next group.
Thank you, Carlos. Anybody else? Thank you. G2, governor's incentives to open. So we've been talking about this because the governor sent some monetary incentives to open. Carlos, or Mr. Vega, can you elaborate more on this?
Yeah, I'll have Mr. Vega and Ms. Ramirez actually talk on behalf of this one.
So I can let you know about the requirements for the grants. So in order for you to apply for the grant, you have to meet certain requirements. And one of the requirements was that you should have less than 25 case rate numbers. And so as mentioned, well, actually it wasn't here, we mentioned that our current numbers, we're not meeting the 25 per 100,000 rate. So the other thing is that you must have your reopening plan ready. And that plan should include routine asymptomatic testing for all students and staff. So that means that if you wanted to apply for this grant, the funds that you will receive, you would have to use to do testing. And they tell us to refer to the guidance and the testing cadence. And the testing cadence is saying that, for example, our case, where right now we're more than 14 per 100,000, is we would have to do the symptomatic and the response. Well, that's when someone turns out positive, and so we have to test anybody who was near contact or exposed. And so after that, it would have to be every week or even twice a week, depending. So we would have to have a system of testing routinely in our schools. You have to have an approved collective bargaining agreement. Then you had to submit this plan by February the 1st. And then you're required, once you submit the plan and it's approved on the 1st, you are required to have invited all students that are from transitional kindergarten all the way to 2nd grade and all students of high needs by February 16. And then a month later, you were supposed to invite all elementary school students by March 15th, which means we would have to be ready to open for all of our students. So currently with our metric, we could not apply for this grant.
And from a fiscal perspective, you're looking at about $4 to $5 million in, what could have been potential revenues.
But because of our numbers, we don't qualify.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, we can still offer in-person instruction without the grant if we were to meet the 25 per 100,000 for TK through 6th grade. And if but we couldn't do it for the 7th through 12th because they still fall under the red tier. So you can only reopen for secondary if you were in the red tier. What the other thing that we can still do is the small cohorts, which you can bring small numbers of students with no more than 14 students per 2 adults. And we can start providing services. So for that, we don't need to submit a plan to the state.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. And Mr. Vega.
Thank you.
G3, utilization of school parking lots to administer COVID vaccine. So, a council member from the city of Calexico, who is also part of the COVID-19 committee that I belong to, is contemplating having, when the time comes, doing some sort of mobile vaccine shot, just like they did in Phoenix, in those areas. So, given the fact that we saw what happened, what was it, 2 weeks ago when they were trying to do it, they were trying to do the same thing in the Imperial Valley Mall, and we don't want that to happen here in Calexico. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels when it becomes available, if we should let the city of Calexico use our facilities. And I'm just talking about the parking lots one on the east side and one on the west side as part of that mobile vaccine procedure.
Well, we need to realize that Arizona has different
policies and procedures as far as that
Yeah.
goes, the state. Here with us, also, I mean, I wouldn't be in favor of it, because if something happens with a person getting a vaccine, they end up collapsing there, and something ends up happening in the parking lot, guess who's gonna be held liable?
Yeah.
So that's the reason why, I would say no. I mean, I think it's a good idea. It is a good idea, but that's something that I think we could leave up to, say, for example, to an IVC or San Diego State. I think that's different.
Yeah.
But as far as utilizing our parking lots and stuff like that, I wouldn't be in favor of it. I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's just my stand on it.
Yeah, I support Kiki on that. Unless the person doing it gets special insurance
Mm.
that covers all activities here.
Mm.
It's insurance for special events.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no.
Okay.
I agree with Kiki and Mr. Romero.
Okay.
We need we can't be held liable if something were to happen to someone here in our district that would affect our
Okay.
school, our budget.
Rachel?
They could use, the city has a movie theater, they're involved, they could use that.
Well, there's the movie theater, there's the parking lot at Walmart on the north side. Toys R Us,
Where Forever 21 was at?
Forever, and that's what I mentioned to the councilman, Forever 21.
The parking lot for the grand outlets, I think that would be,
Over there, yes. So there's plenty of spots that could be used
Yes.
in order to do something like that, so, okay. Okay, Carlos, anything on that?
Yeah, we looked into a little bit. Maybe you want to add it, Mr. Vega?
Yes, Mr. Gonzalez, and as trustee Romero stated, remember back in November, we had the similar situation with the voting centers.
Mm-hmm.
So, back then, we checked with Keenan, our insurance carrier, and also with legal counsel. And their advice was, can it be done? Yes. Is it recommended? No. In case that we do and go for it, like Mr. Romero stated, we need to make sure that, the county, Imperial County Health Department, they, add us to their insurance as a protected entity. The whole harmless provision and all of that has to come into play. So, you're right. I'm glad that you are, not looking into that, because there's a liability, and if we were ever to get there, we need to, protect ourselves.
Thank you. G4, Arctic Air expenditures, breakdown of costs and contract review. So on this, just like last time, we got a presentation, but the presentation went everywhere. So basically, the questions that I have for this is, number one, who authorized Arctic Air to do to go and buy AC units and to install them?
Well, if there was a need, like we had mentioned in the presentation, then obviously there was, the authorization given by management to go ahead and get them approved, to get them changed and get them swapped. So it was.
Well, somebody in the district office had to say, yes, go ahead, because it's an expenditure. Somebody said it's about $7,000 for a brand new AC. So when Arctic Air said, hey, should we do this? Or when somebody called Arctic Air, hey, we need this done. I want to know who is the one that said, yes, you can go ahead and do this, even though it's not in your contract. I want to know who said, yes, you can do this.
Well, I can tell you this, Mr. President.
Mr. Vega is,
Well,
yes.
let me tell you, I trust my management team, okay? And if they say there's a need to replace it, I trust that they're working and making sure that they are replacing units because they need to be replaced. I shared with you when we had this conversation that I personally walked Enrique Camarena Junior High School. There was air conditioners that were being replaced. I know that school was there since 2006 at least, and I can tell you that I don't even know if those trailers were brand new. So I know that those air conditioners needed to get replaced. So do I have a doubt, at least myself, that my team is making decisions to replace in a way that is in any way unethical? No, I don't. And so I am the superintendent of the district. And so ultimately, everything falls on me. So I'm just giving you a response that in regards to approving, I trust my management team, and I give them the authority to move forward and be able to make decisions that are going to be in the best interest for our students, our staff, and the community.
And I hate to do this, but ultimately, Mr. Gonzalez, that decision, the public is gonna come and ask us, why is it that because the public is going to think that we allowed $1 million of over expenditures to take place. So they're gonna ask us, why is it that we allowed that? Not you, but why is it that we allowed that, when we did not allow that? Okay, so I just wanted, number one, I wanna know who's the one that said, go ahead. Number two, where is the list? Where is the list that says, okay, this AC needed to be replaced because of this? Because when we do something, there's always a log. Okay, air conditioning in M5 needed to be replaced because of a faulty condenser. I don't know. There's supposed to be a list like that. So is there such a list?
Well, I know in the presentation, there was information that was shared with the board regarding certain air conditioners that had been replaced. And there was a table by school site with the number of air conditioners that had actually been replaced. So if you're looking for a more comprehensive list regarding what specific air conditioner was replaced at which specific site, I can guarantee you we can get you that information.
Okay, yes, we're gonna need it.
Okay?
And that's it for you answer my question, so I don't know if anybody has any more questions.
I have a comment. Do we have like a system where we have an inventory where, I don't know, someone mentioned, and I believe someone mentioned, or it came to my mind, a system where we can see, like, project if we're going to be needing new ACs in this particular school or within a year or two?
That's a good question, Ms. Magallanes. I think we had discussed it in the presentation, the day of the presentation, that we were looking at a preventative maintenance, right, Mr. Vega?
Mhm.
So that is one of the things that we're bringing to the board per our last board discussion, to make sure, like Mr. Calderon had mentioned, what is the plan for a replacement? And, when we bring that plan, obviously, the part of discussion is two questions, right? One, do we replace air conditioners every 10 years, just as an example? Or do we replace air conditioners when they fail, right? And what is most cost effective? So those are the questions that we're also going to be, bringing to the board as well. So it's a very good question, because it is something that we have already been discussing.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. And G5, CIF Sports Update for Calexico Unified School District. There's a presentation.
Yes, we'll have Mr. Velez. He's on Zoom. He's our athletic director for Calexico High School, and he's been doing an excellent job, especially, under these circumstances where everything is so uncertain. And so he's going to give us a brief presentation just overall regarding sports, so the board can get a better understanding of where we're at, and also our recommendation at this point. Are you there, Mr. Velez?
No. You're muted, Mr. Ellis.
Oh, there he is. Yes. You're still muted, Mr. Velez. I don't know if it's on your end or. All right, there you are. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Velez.
Thank you, Brady. And I do have a brief presentation. As you all know, we've been given a date for the first municipal date for practice to begin for sport work. We only have another year. All the sports have been given a tiny tier, color based on the risk factor. And that puts us right where we are now, with only purple tier sports allowed to begin as of February 1st. once we get the green light from our board and actually present it. And what that means for our schools here in the county is that cross-country swim will be the first to come on board as permissible between practices and potentially competitions. And coming up in season 2 at the end of February and March, then we have boys and girls tennis and track and field. Everything else has to arrive at a steer before we can begin any activity. And so moving forward right now, we're looking at combining and working hard for the end of the beginning of cross-country and swim. Working really closely with Mr. Gonzalez and Ms. Ramirez at the district office, we discussed risk factors, how we're going to manage risk to our athletes, to our students, transportation for our student athletes, and the numbers that potentially we could have given these sports. Back in August, we received a guideline that cohorts of students and coaches were 14 players, 2 coaches, has since been changed to a team. So now we can have a full team and coaches participating in practices which currently are limited to conditioning, field goalie. And so what that could mean is that we could have a player, potentially up to 10 coaches as in football, practicing at any given time. Other concerns and key points that we talked about were this cohorting with facilities, and obviously distribution of PPE to players and coaches to ensure that we reduce the risk of exposure. And working with Mr. Gonzalez and District Office, we have some items in place already to provide that to our players and coaches once we are allowed to begin. What we did come up with is basic procedures that will be in place for all sports once they begin, starting again with cross country and swim. And as is the case with our district protocols, we will be implementing the following steps for all sports as we continue to move forward. And again, so ingress and egress into campuses will be strictly supposed to be at strategic and designated points. So we will control who comes onto campus and who is not allowed to come on campus very strictly. We will distribute all participants for systems to including coaches. That includes temperature scanning and asking the question that we currently ask our staff, symptoms. No parents or non-participants will be allowed. No spectators at contests at this time. We do anticipate that we will live, once we get to the point we have games and competition. Masks are to be worn by all participants at all times. Players are asked to wear their mask up to the point of competition, and again, that is sport specific. Some athletic activity will allow for kids to keep their masks on while they compete, others will not. Coaches must wear their masks at all times. And there will be no sharing of towels, athletic equipment for water bottles and cups. We will require that all participants maintain social and physical distancing as is practical depending on the activity. When it comes to team work, we must follow our sports schedule and be allowed according to the tier. Again, right now we are only, and so the only activities are, again, cross-country and swim. Cohorts include the entire sports team and coaching staff, and this will be only our paid coaches at this time. We're limited to that and no volunteers. Conditioning must occur outside. We will not have any activity that will occur indoors. Temperature checks with glucose thermometers for everyone upon arrival, including coaches. And typically do is that anybody with a temperature of 100.4 will not be allowed to stay. No more than 1 hour of practice per day to begin with, and no more than 5 days per week. We can, as we move into this, and we're having success, we will likely expand the practices as permitted. Again, we will not allow sharing of equipment. Athletes and coaches must bring their own water. Again, masks must be worn on campus unless conditioning. And again, this depends on the activity at hand. Social distancing as much as possible with a minimum of 6 feet. At this point, we're looking at varsity because of numbers, we're looking at varsity and those kids who are scholastically eligible. Some sports may have all levels, but again, this depends on participation. We do have a lot of athletes that have not completed the clearance process and may not do so. We will issue a clearance card that has to be approved by me before they participate in any practice on campus. Coaches and student athletes, they only participate in one cohort at a time. What this means is that we have kids who are multiple sport athletes, and we have coaches that coach multiple sports. If any of the sports are going on at the same time, unfortunately, our students and coaches will have to pick which one they will participate until that particular sport is over. And so they cannot go back and forth between sports on any given season at this time. What we did also discuss is what happens if we have a student or a coach that is exposed or claims to be exposed or comes out positive. So in the event of a positive COVID test or exposure, we will follow the current guidelines that exist in the state and at the district level. Any student athlete that tests positive for COVID, or even coach, may not return to the activity until they are cleared by the doctor and will request documentation for that. All guidelines will be followed, including local guidelines, including district guidelines that are in place at this point. And so right now, the current status of our athletic programs is that we are continuing to work with our students and their parents to make sure they are eligible to participate. This includes the academic requirement of a 2.0. They must complete the entire packet online. They must submit a proof of insurance, and they must have a proof of a recent physical. At this point, they are not waiving the requirement for a physical examination to participate, so all those are in place. And again, we do have a limited amount of participants that have cleared, and so initially we will have low numbers, and this will affect not only the levels of sport that we are allowed to offer, but it also impact transportation to contests once those are in place. Mr. Gonzalez does have a list of recommendations that he would like to share with you. Mr. Gonzalez?
All righty, thank you, Mr. Velez, for the presentation. So some of the recommendations we have is to start conditioning practice for the approved sports by CIF, which would be February 1st. Now, it doesn't mean February 1st everybody would start. I mean, it could take some days to make sure that we have eligibility, everything in place, but we would like to move forward with that. Also, allow conditioning of sports practice in their tiers, as Mr. Velez explained, per the California Department of Public Health and the CIF guidelines. Right now, it would be specifically cross-country and swimming, but then it would move to golf, but we don't have golf. Then afterwards, it would be tennis. So there is a schedule that has been laid out by CIF. For clarification with the Imperial County Health Department, we did have a meeting today, and some of the questions that we asked in regards to the stay-at-home order being lifted in the Imperial County, and is competition going to be allowed? So we did talk to Ms. Janet Angulo, who's the director of the Imperial County Health Department, and she mentioned that yes, for competition as per the health youth guidelines that came out yesterday, we may follow them and we can compete. But the only competition that we can have right now based on the stage that we're on is basically only one team to another team. If we want to compete with multiple teams, that would be something that the public health officer would need to give us authorization on. So we do have a meeting with him on Thursday to see if multiple teams would be able to compete. But at least for now, we do have the green light to be able to practice and condition and be able to compete one team at a time. And in regards to even the stay-at-home orders that have just been lifted for the region, as you know, gyms, they can even go in condition as long as it's outdoors. And so the other point just to make that Imperial County high school districts are moving forward with beginning sports and conditioning, and of course following the guidance of the California Department of Public Health and CIF guidelines. So it is our recommendation, obviously, to the board at this point, with a lot of guidance and just being very cautious to move in the direction of allowing our students to be able to begin with sports. We all know it's been a difficult time when it comes to the social emotional component. We also believe that this is moving in the right direction for us and for our students. So that is our recommendation, if we have the board support to be able to move forward.
So this is just for practice.
Correct. Practice and conditioning, which is allowed, and competition, but only one-to-one teams.
So how will we transfer students? Let's say that we need to play in Brawley. How will we transfer students if safely?
Right. So that's there are guidelines that we follow, and we do have a meeting also with Dr. Monday on Thursday as well to discuss that. But in regards to what the guidelines state from the California Public Health Department that came out, they do give us that ability to be able to move forward and practice, and like I mentioned, compete, and in regards to travel, as long as those guidelines are followed.
Okay.
I don't have a question, I have a suggestion. Since we're starting this fresh, if you can keep us abreast every week on your
Updates?
updates.
Absolutely.
For the board members and also for the next board meeting, to let the public know how these sports are going.
Good. And I'll have Mr. Velez, our athletic director, also
Yeah.
present to give a board an update on how things are going.
Our community informed, how it's going.
Okay.
So right now will only be swimming and track and field,
Cross country?
cross country.
Right. And Mr. Velez, I think it's the 15th of February that tennis can start at that point?
What we have is, come February 15th, the second set of cohorts can begin, that would be tennis, and then, track and field. Track and field actually will begin practices February 15th in allowable, but their competition won't start until March. So what we do have is that track and field and cross country will be considered one cohort, because for the most part, it's the same kids,
Same.
all the same coaches. And so at that point, those can work together, but they won't start their competition until March.
Okay.
And again, it's going to be gradual, like Mr. Velez mentioned in the presentation. Participation may be low. I mean, we're not making it mandatory. It's going to be voluntary, of course, like anything. But we do have some students and coaches, that are ready to go. Some coaches, I mean, they're hesitant. But where we're at in the guidelines and the process, I think it's a good time to start moving forward and, start bringing at least the conditioning back at this point.
Anybody else? Margarita?
No comment.
Mr. Melo? Okay, so I guess if things were to change for the numbers were to start going up again, then Dr. Monday will be calling for a meeting. And-
Right. Dr. Monday, obviously, or the state, right, for that matter, if there's a change, they will immediately make that change. I know that the updates that just came out, those are part of the California Department of Health. So they're the ones that are putting those guidelines. What CIF is doing is it's making sure it follows with those guidelines to make sure that there is compliance. That was part of my question today with Imperial County Health Department regarding stay-at-home order and competition. Are we going to be allowed to have competition? And the response was yes, because it is part of the California Department of Health guidelines, and that's what they are following here at the local level as well.
Okay. So is this board okay? Well, okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Gonzalez.
Okay, so we'll move forward and
Yes.
we'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Velez.
Thank you, Mr. Velez.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you. Anything else on G5? No? Okay, H, adjournment. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Mr. Alvarado, second. By Mr. Calderon Jr. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 unanimously. Thank you. It is now 6:43 p.m.